watching All 24 News World News Program. Next up are the headlines. Tehran and Pakistan agree on a roadmap. Rubio says Iran has a chance to take a U.S. deal, and Pakistan's military calls the progress real and encouraging. Algeria vows to protect its natural wealth. The UN commends its biodiversity role, and international praise pours in for its green energy shift. The Moroccan occupation imposes a siege on Laayoune and threatens Sahrawi activists. Meanwhile, Odessa urges international action to stop the repression. Russia reports rising casualties in Luhansk. Ukraine says it targeted Russian ports and oil facilities and rejects the EU's associate membership offer as unfair. Welcome back. First off, in our news tonight, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai said Saturday a memorandum of understanding had been reached with the Pakistani mediator to end the war in the Middle East, while Tehran awaited a U.S. response. He said Iran was finalizing a framework agreement after a visit by Pakistani Army Chief Asim Munir. The proposal deal includes ending the war, lifting the blockade, reopening the Strait of Hormuz, and U.S. troop withdrawal, while excluding nuclear issues, which he said required longer negotiations.
After several weeks of bilateral talks, we are observing a tendency toward convergence. This convergence does not necessarily mean that we will reach an understanding with the United States on key issues, but rather that both sides are seeking an acceptable settlement based on a number of elements. The Memorandum of Understanding includes 14 clauses aimed at ending the war. We are currently in the phase of finalizing the framework of the agreement. We cannot ignore Washington's record regarding the nuclear file, particularly its withdrawal from the agreement and its attacks against us. Given these negative past experiences, it is unrealistic to expect a final outcome within a limited time frame. Our focus remains on ending the war, while discussions regarding the nuclear file within 30 or 60 days are a separate matter. The timeline outlined in the Memorandum of Understanding will not begin until a final agreement on the memorandum is reached.
For his part, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said some progress had been made in the Iran talks, adding there was a chance a deal could be reached within hours or days. Speaking in New Delhi on Saturday, he said work was still ongoing and expressed hope for good news soon.
Highly skilled labor. The question is about the Iranian issue, and as I said, there's been some progress done, some progress made. Even as I speak to you now, there's some work being done. There is a chance that whether it's later today, tomorrow, in a couple days, we may have something to say. But this issue needs to be solved, as the President has said, one way or the other. Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. The straits need to be opened without tolls. They need to turn over their enriched uranium. They need to turn over their highly enriched uranium. We need to address that issue. We need to address the issue of enrichment. These are the President's points consistently, and his preference is always to deal with it in a diplomatic way.
The Pakistani military says there's encouraging progress toward a final deal between Washington and Tehran. That's after a visit by its chief Asim Munir to Iran. In a statement, the military confirmed its chief held highly productive talks with Iran's president and senior officials in Tehran about ending the war. Similarly, U.S. President Donald Trump said sanctions on Iran will continue aimed to economically strangle it and deter it from obtaining a nuclear weapon. In a post on Truth Social on Friday, he said Iran would never have a nuclear weapon, adding that Tehran's leaders know it. He said the only path forward was military deterrence and cutting off funding sources. 27 countries have activated domestic crisis mechanisms to seek funding from the World Bank to address the global economic impact of the war crisis, according to Reuters, citing an internal document. The report said the countries moved to access emergency financing tools under existing World Bank programs since the start of the war in Iran, though it did not name them or specify the amounts involved. Officials in Kenya and Iraq confirmed they had requested rapid support, citing rising fuel prices and declining oil revenues. Tensions remain high despite Pakistan's efforts. No deal is in sight. Iran wants peace talks to focus on ending the war and lifting sanctions, while the United States said its top priority is keeping Iran from getting nuclear weapons. Sarah Virginia has more in this report.
Tensions between the United States and Iran continue to simmer, with major disagreements still standing in the way of any breakthrough. On May 23rd, Tehran once again accused Washington of undermining ongoing negotiations through what it described as contradictory positions and excessive demands. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said those actions were disrupting talks currently being mediated by Pakistan. Despite the growing tensions, Araghchi insisted Iran remains committed to diplomacy and is pursuing what he called a fair and a reasonable agreement. But while mediators push to avoid another escalation, signals coming from Washington suggest the situation could be heading in the opposite direction. US President Donald Trump hinted at possible developments ahead after saying on social media that government-related circumstances would prevent him from attending his son's wedding this week. At the same time, a report by CBS News revealed that U.S. defense and intelligence officials have started reviewing recall lists for American troops stationed across the Middle East, reportedly as part of preparations for potential Iranian retaliation. And if Washington and its Zionist ally move forward with strikes targeting Iran's economic infrastructure, particularly energy facilities, Tehran says it is ready to respond. Iranian military officials claim new operational plans are already in place, involving advanced equipment, expanded targets, new strategic tactics, and even the possibility of opening fronts beyond Iran's current borders. Meanwhile, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghai reiterated Tehran's core demands: a full lifting of sanctions, the release of frozen Iranian assets abroad, an end to what Iran calls hostile U.S. actions against its people, and the removal of the American maritime blockade, which Tehran says is a clear violation of international law.
Still with the Middle East developments, at least 14 Lebanese were killed early Saturday in heavy Zionist airstrikes across the country. The Health Ministry says 13 died and at least 7 others were wounded when homes in several towns in the Tar district were bombed. 25 medical and administrative staff were wounded at Hiram Hospital in Tyre after it was directly hit. Separately, 1 person was killed in a bombing of the town of Rafid in the Bekaa Valley. Medical sources at a Shifa hospital said at least 7 bodies were brought in after a Zionist airstrike hit the Tuam area north of Gaza City. Palestinian Civil Defense said 7 people were killed and 6 others wounded in a strike on a police station in northern Gaza Strip. The Gaza Health Ministry said 8 people were killed and 29 others wounded in the past 24 hours alone, adding that since the ceasefire took effect, the death toll had risen to 890, with more than 2,670 injured, while the overall war toll stood at 72,783 killed and 172,779 wounded. In Gaza's extreme health crisis, the Red Cross Field Hospital in Rafah remains a vital lifeline, providing urgent care despite security threats and severe shortages. More on this story with Marwa Bahloul now.
This is the Red Cross Field Hospital in Rafah, a symbol of hope and survival for many Gazans. After 2 years of its establishment as a temporary facility amid the genocide, the medical structure is finally able to continue saving lives thanks to rehabilitation and modernization efforts.
This modernization has played a vital role in keeping the Red Cross Field Hospital in southern Gaza operational and in sustaining healthcare services across the Strip. It will expand the hospital's capacity from 60 to 72 beds and introduce significant upgrades to the operating theaters, outpatient clinics, and emergency department, alongside enhanced post-operative care services, helping to ease overcrowding within the hospital.
The modernisation and expansion of the field hospital was no easy task, as the engineering and logistics teams had to overcome many challenges related to the security situation and the difficulty of transporting the necessary materials and equipment.
As you can see, the hospital is made up of tents. When it was established 2 years ago, in May 2024, it was designed to operate temporarily for no more than 6 months as a field hospital in a conflict zone. Yet 2 years later, the hospital is still here, and the humanitarian healthcare needs remain urgent. It therefore became necessary to undertake a large-scale renovation of the aging and damaged infrastructure so the hospital could continue operating for a long period.
Patients, for their part, see the hospital as a place of refuge. Many are grateful for the medical services provided, even as anxiety continues to weigh heavily on their daily lives.
I
have just come out of surgery, thank God. The medical team treated my gunshot wound and removed shrapnel and other foreign objects.
The field hospital, established through a partnership between the International Committee of the Red Cross, the Palestine Red Crescent Society, and 16 Red Cross societies from around the world, remains a vital lifeline for thousands of patients amid the collapse of the healthcare system in the besieged enclave.
Moving on to a different news story now. Algeria on Saturday reaffirmed its commitment to protecting its natural resources through a participatory approach in line with international obligations under the Convention on Biological Diversity. UN Mediterranean Action Plan Coordinator Tatiana Hima praised Algeria's sustained commitment to biodiversity protection and sustainable development.
First of all, allow me to extend my sincere thanks and appreciation to the Algerian authorities for their warm welcome and generous hospitality, as well as for organizing this outstanding event and for their continued and long-standing commitment to preserving biodiversity and achieving sustainable development. Algeria is home to vast and diverse ecosystems that provide major ecological value, stretching from coastal and marine areas to wetlands, forests and desert landscapes. This exceptional natural diversity represents a precious heritage and serves as a key pillar in strengthening resilience against climate change. Ultimately, the well-being of people remains at the very heart and spirit of these efforts.
Meanwhile, the UN official praised Algeria's key role and commitment to protecting the marine and coastal environment and to preserving biodiversity and natural ecosystems across the Mediterranean.
In the framework of the Barcelona Convention for the Protection of the Marine Environment and the Coastal Region of the Mediterranean and the Mediterranean Action Plan of the United Nations Environment Programme, we work hand in hand with member states, including Algeria, to support this transition and strengthen regional cooperation. Algeria plays a pivotal role in this regional dynamic through its commitment to protecting the marine and coastal environment, preserving natural components and biodiversity, and advancing both regional and global objectives. Algeria has defined its national contribution to the global and regional 30 by 30 target aimed at protecting and conserving biodiversity. The United Nations Environment Programme and the Barcelona Convention commend this Algerian commitment to safeguarding the ecological integrity of terrestrial and marine ecosystems.
Portugal and Italy expressed their interest in expanding environmental cooperation with Algeria, praising its strong commitment to combating climate change and protecting biodiversity.
Biodiversity renewal is not merely an environmental issue. Its degradation poses a danger with direct economic, social and geopolitical consequences. Today we are facing simultaneous climate, developmental, energy, environmental and ecological crises. Yet at the same time, we are presented with a genuine opportunity to build a development model that is more sustainable, fairer and more cooperative. Mr. Minister, dear colleague, thank you for this invitation. I congratulate you on the success of this celebration, and I reaffirm Portugal's full readiness to strengthen and deepen our bilateral cooperation with Algeria in the environmental field. It is for me a great honor to participate in this important event and to reaffirm the strong commitment of Portugal to the environmental cooperation and sustainable development alongside Algeria.
It is for me a great honor to represent Italy today here in Algeria. Italy and Algeria, two countries so close, so endowed with extraordinarily rich natural heritage. In this spirit, I feel the need to express, also on behalf of Minister Piquet-Fratin, my most sincere gratitude to the Algerian Ministry of Environment and Quality of Life for organizing this important event.
Mauritania reaffirmed its commitment to biodiversity protection and international cooperation, praising Algeria's remarkable progress in environmental conservation and energy transition.
Our visit today to the Botanical Garden in Algeria was a model to be emulated by all countries of the continent, as well as by our own country. We will, God willing, ask our colleagues in Algeria to work with us to replicate this unique experience in order to preserve both plant biodiversity and animal biodiversity. Together, we strive within the framework of joint international action to protect our environment for the future, within the framework of the Kunming-Montreal, as well as the United Nations Framework Convention.
Chad's environment minister called Algeria a biodiversity role model. He said both nations share the same climate challenges and praised their strong environmental cooperation.
Algeria represents a true model of biodiversity, and our two countries share nearly the same challenges, particularly those linked to the Sahara Desert and the Sahara region. For us, Algeria is a major desert nation, and as a result, we face the same climate and environmental realities. We are convinced that we are building and developing distinguished and close bilateral relations in the environmental field so that together we can confront the common challenges facing our countries.
To more regional news now, Moroccan occupation forces have intensified a campaign of repression and intimidation in Laayoune in Western Sahara, including a tight security siege on the city and homes of human rights activists. The Sahrawi news agency reported that the siege targeted the family home of Mohammed Hassan Bourial and the residence of Ali Salem Tamek, head of the Sahrawi Association of Human Rights Defenders, with threats made against family members and several activists and restrictions placed on access to their homes. Ali Salem Tamek, president of the Sahrawi Association of Human Rights Defenders in Western Sahara, also known Codessa, condemned threats and a siege imposed on his home by Moroccan occupation authorities. He said the measures would not deter him from continuing his human rights work and defending the Sahrawi rights. Tamek also called on the international human rights and humanitarian organizations to pressure Morocco to end the repression and intimidation in Western Sahara.
We call upon international organizations, the international community, humanitarian organizations and institutions, democratic bodies, and the human rights mechanisms of the United Nations to intervene in order to protect the members of my family, as well as Sahrawi human rights defenders, and to ensure respect for human rights in Western Sahara.
Switching focus to Eastern Europe, the pro-Moscow regional administration in Luhansk, Eastern Ukraine, said the death toll from a strike on a school had risen to 18 people, with 17 victims identified. It also reported 48 wounded and 3 missing. Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered the military to respond forcefully, accusing Ukraine of deliberately targeting a boarding school in Starobelsk. Ukraine's military denied the claim, saying it had struck a Russian command unit. Ukrainian forces said they targeted the Novorossiysk oil terminal in Russia's Krasnodar region on the Black Sea and struck a large chemical plant in the Perm region. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed in a telegram post that the Metafrask chemical plant was hit, saying it halted operations at a facility supplying the Russian military. The governor of the Krasnodar reported a fire at the Novorossiysk port oil terminal following a Ukrainian drone attack, with debris also hitting storage facilities. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has described Germany's proposal for Ukraine to gain associate EU membership as unfair, saying it would deny Kiev a voice within the bloc. In a letter to EU leaders reported by Reuters, he said accession talks had made significant progress but insisted Ukraine deserves equal treatment and rights in Europe. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz had proposed allowing Ukraine to attend EU meetings without voting rights as a transitional step toward full membership. To another global news story, Mexico and the European Union are set to deepen economic ties with a new updated free trade agreement aimed at diversifying partners amid U.S. tariff pressures. According to Reuters, the news agency, the deal is expected to be signed in Mexico City during a summit between President Claudia Sheinbaum and EU leaders Ursula von der Leyen. It expands including leaders from the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen and Antonio Costa. It expands the 2000 agreement to include services, digital trade, investment, and agriculture.
The goal here is simple. We want to create even more jobs and value on both sides. With swift ratification, tariffs on virtually all Mexican agri-food exports to Europe will disappear. Imagine the opportunities. European companies, drawn by Mexico's talent and dynamism, already support more than 5 million jobs here, and there is much more to come.
The European Union has rejected the UK proposal to rejoin the single market for goods ahead of a summit scheduled for July. The plan aimed to ease trade barriers and support British companies, but the European Commission said the issue would not be on the agenda. Talks will instead focus on the so-called Reset Agreement and cooperation on security, defense, and migration.
The upcoming summit will not address the proposal for Britain to join the single market for goods, and priority will be given to following up on the reset file related to the result of last year's summit, in addition to discussing current areas of cooperation between the two sides, especially in the areas of defense and immigration, while no discussion will be opened at this stage regarding expanding the scope of economic integration or granting new trade arrangement.
And now the news in brief with Sofia Canturi.
The Sudanese army announced on Saturday that it had shot down a drone belonging to the Rapid Support Forces in the vicinity of Damazin, the capital of Blue Nile State in southern Sudan. The Sudanese army said that air defenses detected the drone at dawn and shot it down before it reached its target. This attack comes just hours after a similar drone attack on the capital, Khartoum.
The African Union's health agency has warned that 10 African countries are at risk of an Ebola outbreak. In addition to the Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda, the Director General of the African Health Agency, John Kassia, said South Sudan, Rwanda, Kenya, Tanzania, Ethiopia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Burundi, Angola, the Central African Republic, and Zambia are currently facing a high risk of an outbreak of this deadly virus.
State media said that at least 90 people were killed in an explosion at a coal mine in northeastern China, the deadliest such incident in 17 years. Chinese President Xi Jinping called for mobilizing all possible means to treat the injured and demanded a thorough investigation into the incident.
Despite heavy rain, Sydney's iconic landmarks lit up Friday night for the opening of the annual Vivid Festival. French artist Yann Guéma transformed the Sydney Opera House, sales with Opera Mundi, featuring animated marine, Amber Dimitri. Installations by Angela Tiatia and Javier Riera also illuminated the Museum of Contemporary Art and Customs House with vibrant visual displays.
And that's the end of our news program. Thank you for tuning in. Good night.